Why is that funny?
Because she's touching the meat?
No. It is a satire of people who say Kafkaesque when a situation is not Kafkaesque.
Well, it would be funnier if the caption said, "Please, no meat touching, ma'am."
So, I love Daria. And if you knew that already, congratulations. You're willing to put up with me yapping for more than one video. But I don't just love Daria. I love art. I love creation. Music, animation, screenwriting. I consume it. I create it. Gimme, gimme, gimme. I need some more. Making art can be fun, devastating, therapeutic, and possibly even enlightening. But damn, if you decide you love art enough to try and make a career out of it, it can also be terrifying. All because of one word. Not that one, the other one. Daria actually dedicates an entire episode to the subject of selling out, or rather, the idea of being a hack. So this started off mostly as an episode breakdown, but as I was going through Artburn, I had a thought. The entirety of this show actually has a lot to say about what it means to be an artist, and it says it all through two central characters, Jane and Trent Lane. In fact, I'd say the Lane siblings perfectly represent the two camps I tend to group almost every other artist that I come across into. For now, let's call them classic and modern. These are mostly placeholder terms for even broader subjects, but they'll do for today because I'm going to attempt to keep this brief for the sake of my sanity while editing. Classic and modern artists are actually pretty alike. The biggest difference between the two is honestly just how they view selling out. But don't tell either one I said that though. A classic artist might get offended that they've been compared to a no-talent corpo bootlicker, and a modern artist might get angry that they've been lumped in with an inconsiderate, childish idealist. But if you really want to piss them both off, just call either a sellout. But what does that even mean? Where's the line? When do you cross it? Can you tap dance on it? Can you limbo back once you slide under? Where does it even start? I don't know. But we're gonna start with Jane. Jane Lane does a great job of representing what I'm gonna call a modern artist. When I say that, it doesn't really have anything to do with when she was born. I just mean she's flexible. Artburn does a great job of exploring that idea. The episode begins with The Spiral, or Mystic Spiral, that's Trent's band for the uninitiated, hanging outside the Lane house with Daria and Jane while they try to put together a photo for a new album cover. Unfortunately, it's built like most of the gazebos I've seen in my life, meaning it was put together during the Stone Age, full of water damage, and probably infested with those damn dangly leg wasps. So it doesn't take long for the entire thing to come crashing down on top of them. They then do the sensible thing and decide to split up for a while instead of using this extra time to practice for whatever gig I know they've probably forgotten about already. Everyone left heads inside, where they're soon met by the arrival of the older Lane sibling, Wynn.
Penny?
My name is Oliver Twist, sir.
He's the sensitive lover boy of the family, and the sight of the gazebo in shambles leaves him in tears, which should not surprise you if you've seen the show. Everything leaves bro in tears. He tells his younger brother and sister that this is the family's naming gazebo. It's apparently the place their parents took all the baby Lanes to be named, and they just have to fix it for sentimental value. But of course, they're all flat broke.
How much money do you have? Trent.
I have none, so I said nothing.
But what Trent lacks in money, he makes up for in ideas, because he suggests that Jane sells some of her art pieces at the Art in the Park festival that they're having in Lawndale. Jane agrees to gather the money while Trent gets the contractors to fix the gazebo. What should be a relatively straightforward task for most is honestly out the wheelhouse of Trent, but he's trying. So, later Daria and Tom meet Jane at the park, as she's being torn apart by the masses for her pointed commentary on the masters.
Do you know you've hung this Van Gogh copy upside down?
No, I painted it upside down. I hung it right side up.
Come on, honey, let's go find some pretty barn paintings.
The day isn't a total bust though, as Jane is soon approached by a man named Gary who's impressed by her Van Gogh recreation. He offers to pay her commissions to make some more for his gallery. Gary's kinda robbing though, if you ask me. 60% off a teenager is nasty work. The problems start off as most do, with Daria questioning someone's morality, this time Jane, in her participation in essentially becoming a human copy machine. Jane reassures her though, she's only in it for the money.
Money, money, money. I love money. I'd shovel it down my throat if I could.
You're kidding, right?
Of course, Daria. I'd chew it slowly and stop when I felt full.
And the money does come. She's even able to buy Daria a slice of pizza. Nice. What do you think that cost her, like $2? Good times. Since Jane is doing so well, she quickly ends up with enough to pay for the gazebo, so she tries to quit. But Gary says she can't. Her paintings are selling so well. Jane doubles down though, saying that she doesn't feel like much of an artist while she's doing this. Gary counters that art supplies are expensive, and she could save up a lot of money for the future. You never know when you're gonna need it during a rainy day, right? But the Lanes are people of morals, and she stands firm, until Gary adds some more digits to that check.
Money, money, money. I love money. I'd shovel it down my throat if I could.
Daria, predictably, grills Jane a bit after that, asking how long she's planning to work for Gary. She's putting in so many hours on the copies at this point that she hardly has any time for her own pieces. And to add insult to injury, Jane's teacher walks by telling her it's alright to be doing what she's doing, but she hopes it doesn't start to affect her own personal style. I kinda wish we got more of the relationship between her and Jane throughout the series. She always seemed nice and a lot more put together than O'Neill, Barch, and DiMartino. I'm never gonna ask for a Daria revival though. That Jodie movie is already sweating in a Paramount vault somewhere. After that, Jane is back at the house, still painting for Gary, when Trent asks if she wants to come outside and bring her easel to, in his words, portray the birth of the new gazebo. Jane declines because she's now entered the dreaded throes of burnout. This is the most interesting interaction in this episode to me, and the most nuanced, but we'll come back to that later. Trent says that what Jane is doing right now is the exact reason why he refuses to play covers with Mystic Spiral. If you're a gig musician, you know covers are where the money's at. It's much easier to get people on board to hear songs that they already know than to get them to listen to a ballad that somebody they never met wrote about a breakup while they were high and probably passing around a bag of Taco Bell to their bandmates. Jane doesn't exactly hold the same sentiment as her brother though.
Good for you, Trent. Stay true to your art. I'm sure you'll always have the negative bank balance to prove it.
But Jane also can't deny that her arm is getting tired, and that never used to happen before. From there, she tries to convince herself that maybe Gary is part of a counterfeiting ring, and her copies are so good that he might be selling them off as originals. So, like any sane person, she enlists Daria to help her commit a sting.
But you have to distract Gary while I'm grabbing it.
And just how am I supposed to do that, Mr. Phelps?
You'll figure out something. Use your womanly attributes.
Gotcha. I'll give birth.
This turns out to be all in her head though, and Jane and Daria find out that the last person who bought her art is actually Brittany's dad. So they head over to check it out, much to Brittany's surprise. Her dad shows up and acts as the perfect rich art snob. He wants the copy hanging in his house so he can pass it off to his friends as an original. But when Jane and Daria ask him about it, he tears Jane down, calling the people who make the copies hacks and criticizing her brushwork. The worst part about the critique is Jane agrees with him. Her brushwork has been getting sloppy, and now she's entered full-on creative block, which in my opinion is much harder to deal with than burnout. Burnout can usually be solved by a break. Creative block will have you questioning if you were ever good to begin with. So, Daria and Jane have one last conversation on the subject, where Daria is able to help Jane fully realize that money is not worth the cost of wearing down her own creativity. Jane whips Trent and the contractors into shape when she gets home because he's been having a hard time trying to get them to actually do their job. And the episode ends with the Lane parents coming home and revealing to everyone that they made up the thing about the naming gazebo so Wind wouldn't change his name to Robert. Classic. In this episode, Jane perfectly embodies my definition of a modern artist, meaning she's willing to adapt to overcome situations that she's presented with. She's given a problem, aka her parents' gazebo turning to a pile of sticks, and she tries to solve it by getting people to buy her original pieces. But when that doesn't work, and she's given the opportunity to make money through Gary, she does what she's gotta do. It only becomes an issue once she gets distracted by the idea of that bigger paycheck. And when the moment comes that these copies start to get in the way of her actual creative process, she quits. If you've ever been in artistic circles, you've met tons of people like this. People trying to get by. Maybe sometimes they're working jobs they'd rather not be, for people they'd rather not work for. But those bills sure do stack up fast. And besides, they can always work slowly to try to achieve their goals over time. How long could that take? Let's see here. Forever? That can't be right. Well, maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. But at least they didn't sell out, right? What did you say? They did sell out. They sold out the moment they prostrated their art in pursuit of the almighty dollar. Who would say that? Oh, I know who. Trent Lane will be our representative for the classic artist today. Classic artists, for the most part, can be a bit inflexible. They're often driven hard by their passion. The type of people who just can't stop creating no matter what's happening in their life. It's like a reflex. Also, though this trait isn't exclusive to them, I tend to find that these artists often really identify with the artists that came before them, sometimes feeling like they've been born in the wrong time, that if only they'd been in the scene in maybe like 1980s New York, somebody might get them. I think we see this a ton with Trent throughout the series, in the way that he talks about music of the past.
The 60s are over.
The 40s were over first.
Maybe, but great style is timeless.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Thanks.
And the one point where this classic ideology is on full display to me is actually the final piece of Daria animation we got. Is it college yet? Is it college yet as far as I'm concerned? It's Daria's magnum opus. This shit is perfection. It takes every character that you love in the show and gives them a moment to shine, all while balancing the idea that as much as Daria and Jane hate high school, they're struggling to understand what they're going to do now that it's all coming to a close. But I'm not here to give you a full breakdown of this movie today. I'm here to talk about the final interaction of the main Lane siblings and how it hints at who they might grow into as adults. Now for some context, during the film, Jane and Daria are having trouble figuring out which college they're going to attend. Daria goes throughout the film trying to balance her relationship with Tom and wondering if the places that the two are going in life are even compatible, while she also deals with her often recurring enemy, rejection. But this time, Jane is fearing the same thing, maybe even more than Daria. She's put together her applications for 2 different state universities, while she works on her portfolio for the college that she actually wants to attend in Boston called BFAC. Later, Trent walks in on Jane working on her BFAC submission piece, and when he finds out what's going on, he doesn't understand why she's even going to college. In his words, she's already an artist.
I know, but I want to be a starving artist, so I need to ring up more debt.
Well, I'd never go to music school. I wouldn't want any teachers trying to corrupt my vision.
I feel like we get a lot of how Trent views art here. He sees the creative process as untouchable. The idea that a teacher might make him practice when he doesn't want to seems to really bug him out. Now Trent's definitely lazy, that's his biggest character flaw, but I do think he really believes in the conviction of what he's saying. To Trent, any outside influence, especially one that he doesn't respect, might adulter his art. Some people might think that's silly, some people might think that's passionate. I just think Trent's funny. Later on, Jane does get back a few letters from those state colleges, and it's not what she's hoping for.
Wow, State University and Lawndale State. We regret to inform you that, due to an unprecedented number of applications, damn.
Trent tries to cheer her up and hits Jane with the old, those who can't do teach speech. Very classic artist perspective here. Why should I learn from someone who's not out there doing the thing that they're passionate about right now? Surely they must have failed. So in a fit of defiance, both lanes decide that college is simply not for them. And Jane, for a moment, abandons her attempts to get into BFAC, because if both these no-name colleges don't want her, why would any other? But I know, in her heart of hearts, she knows Daria would never let that slide. And when her best friend does find out, she pretty much breaks Jane down, telling her she's still in high school and maybe she doesn't know everything there is to know about art. Maybe getting into school could be a good experience for her. Jane's resistant at first, but eventually she's able to make a deal with Daria that she'll submit her portfolio to BFAC for second term admission if Daria asks for a letter of recommendation to the college named Bromwell from Tom's rich parents, which obviously Daria does not want to do.
God, Daria, you must really think I have a shot. You drive a hard bargain, Morgendorfer, but you've got yourself a deal.
So after that little push, Jane goes back home and asks Trent to help her mail out her portfolio. Then he hits her with the word.
See, I can do that at Boston Fine Arts College. That's why they put in the word arts. Come on, let's go.
I don't know. I have to get used to this whole selling out thing first.
But everything seems to work out in the end. Trent's not an asshole, and he realizes that he's not really worried about Jane becoming a sellout. He's more worried that his little sister won't be in the house anymore. With all the rest of his older siblings gone and his parents out doing God knows what, Trent's gonna be alone if Jane leaves. That scares him, and it aligns with the things we hear him talk about earlier in the series. So they make up, and Jane assures him that she's not gonna stop being his little sister just because she's moving a few miles away. Heartwarming stuff for their final storyline. Jane ends up getting into BFAC, and Daria gets into a school called RAB, which happens to also be located in Boston. The two friends will continue their adventures in college. Wonderful. And Trent, well, there's nothing else there. Kinda stinks. Trent Lane is a character that becomes much more interesting the more you think about him. In Is It College Yet, the writers try to say whatever it is that they have left to say about these characters, and a bit about the social groups that they reflect. The fashion club are a bit shallow, but they're still better friends than a lot of people you might have met, and will probably continue to be friends for the rest of their lives. Same with Daria and Jane, with the added bonus of them heading off to school to pursue their passions in visual arts and writing. The future is looking bright. Kevin has to stay back at Lawndale because he never put any effort into his grades. Jody, with some help from Mac, is able to continue her grandma's legacy and attend a more diverse setting, an escape from being the perfect Jody doll. But by the end, Trent is just Trent. But I think that's the point. Trent's end seems to reflect the artist's views on people like him. His growth is almost non-existent. In fact, he's often there to push other characters into more interesting situations. He's a man who's dedicated to his artistic integrity more than he is his craft. He's often inconsiderate of others' time, but he's loving and he pays attention when it matters most. He's wise beyond his years in some ways, but a complete child in others. Trent Lane is the classic artist, or at least a reflection of the classic artist through the lens of a more modern. Even though he's a good person, he's shown to live life unrealistically. So is that it? Modern artists are right and classic artists are wrong? No. I don't believe that's true, and even though I've seen people argue about things like this, I think both types of artists need to exist in order to help build each other. Look at Jane and Trent. That should be the blueprint. They love each other, they help each other out, and most importantly, they're honest. When Trent is being lazy and inconsiderate, Jane never misses an opportunity to remind Trent that he lives in reality. Even though he doesn't want to participate in a capitalistic system, someone else is supporting him. He's got a roof over his head, even if he isn't paying for it. Maybe Trent will make it someday, and this point in his life will be a footnote in his documentary, along with the people who doubted him and supported him. Sometimes rules are meant to be bent. Sometimes you have to find a way to support yourself and whoever's depending on you. But on the flip side, when Jane is losing sight of her creative vision, and when she doubts if she's even a competent artist at all, Trent is there to let her know that she is, to remind her that no one knows her art better than she does. And that's the kind of mentality that I hope all artists apply to each other. Community, artistic integrity, and most of all, honesty. Everyone has their own idea of where the line for selling out starts. But maybe, if we hold each other up, we'll notice before anybody even walks over.